Before sunrise, a percolator hissed to life in an avocado green kitchen no one yet called vintage. A handwritten recipe card came down from the cabinet. A butterball sat thawing by the sink. This was Thanksgiving morning inside an American home in the 1970s. No phones to check, no aesthetic to curate. Just one cook holding the entire day together on a 30-minute basting cycle. Nearly everything about that ritual has quietly disappeared. 6 o'clock brought the first stirrings in a kitchen colored by the era, avocado green fridge, harvest gold oven, and a counter crowded with appliances that promised modern ease. The percolator's hiss filled the silence, steam curling up as the first cup of coffee brewed stronger than any drip machine would dare. A handwritten recipe card, its corners softened by years of gravy stains and flour dust, sat propped against a sugar bowl. The card was less a set of instructions than a family heirloom. It listed turkey, preheat oven 325 degrees, baste every 30 minutes, don't forget the giblets. The cook, usually a mother, sometimes a grandmother, moved with practiced certainty. She checked the butterball, still cold but no longer frozen, resting in a metal basin in the sink. In the early 70s, food safety advice was a patchwork of USDA pamphlets and neighborly wisdom. The bird was never left on the counter, cold water ran over it, and the water was changed every half hour, just as the magazine clipping suggested. In some homes, the ritual included lining the sink with newspaper to catch the melt, a detail as tactile as the morning's chill. The oven door swung open, releasing a metallic whiff as it heated up. 30 minutes before the turkey went in, just as the card dictated. The kitchen filled with the hum of the fridge, the low thrum of a stand mixer waiting its turn, and the rhythmic click of a mechanical timer. Appliance colors weren't a design statement yet. They were simply what was available, their boldness a backdrop for the day's quiet choreography. Everything started with these small sensory rituals: the percolator's gurgle, the feel of crinkled cardstock, the slap of cold water on a thawing turkey. No one paused to photograph the moment. There was no audience, no performance, only the cook, the kitchen, and the familiar pulse of a holiday built from repetition. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't Instagram, it was exactly enough. Decision time arrived with the turkey, and here the kitchen's quiet authority took center stage. A butterball, weighing in at 16 pounds, sat waiting for its turn in the oven, a centerpiece that demanded both patience and nerve. The cook consulted a magazine roasting chart, its glossy fold-out promising a golden bird if every step was followed. The oven, already humming at 325 degrees, was claimed for the next 4 hours, and the logistics of the day started to tighten around that single, unyielding schedule. There was a kind of choreography to the process. The baster, with its rubber bulb and clear plastic tube, made its first appearance. Every 30 minutes, like clockwork, the oven door creaked open and a wave of heat rolled out. Basting wasn't just about moisture, it was a ritual, a chance to check the skin, to reassure yourself that everything was on track. The pop-up timer, a new gadget in the early 70s, sat perched in the breast, its little red stem promising to rise when the bird reached 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Until then, it was just a waiting game, and the kitchen timer's ticking took on a steady, almost hypnotic presence. Stuffing brought its own crossroads. Some cooks went traditional, tearing day-old bread into cubes and mixing in celery, onion, and a heavy hand of sage, stuffing it all inside the turkey's cavity. Others, looking for an easier path, reached for a box of Pepperidge Farm stuffing mix, a product that debuted in 1971. The instructions were simple: add water and butter, bake in a separate dish, and call it done. The choice wasn't just about taste, it was about time, oven space, and the number of hands willing to help. Each decision locked in the rest of the day, when the sides could go in, who would tend the bird, and whether the cook would get a chance to sit down before dinner. There was no Instagram poll to settle the debate, no influencer recipe to follow. Just the cook, the clock, and the knowledge that, in a few hours, the whole house would smell like roast turkey and sage. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't Instagram, it was exactly enough. The Thanksgiving table in the 1970s was a patchwork of familiar brands and label recipes, each dish promising comfort in its predictability. The green bean casserole stood at the center of this ritual, a creamy blend of Campbell's condensed soup, canned beans, and a crown of French's fried onions, straight from the recipe printed on the can. The casserole's aroma mingled with the sharper scent of sweet potatoes, mashed and sweetened, then blanketed with a layer of mini marshmallows that puffed and browned in the oven. For many, the marshmallow topping was a non-negotiable, its sticky sweetness both a treat and a gentle challenge to the old guard who preferred their yams plain. Canned cranberry sauce, ridged and glistening, slid out onto a plate in one smooth cylinder. It was sliced into perfect rounds, each piece holding its shape like a badge of holiday order. The cold jelly's tartness cut through the richness of the meal, and its glossy red was as much a visual anchor as a taste memory. Magazine ads and TV spots had already set the menu long before the day arrived. These dishes weren't just food, they were the expectation. The cook moved between oven and fridge, orchestrating a lineup of sides that could be assembled quickly, baked in sequence, and served with the confidence that nothing would surprise. No one worried about authenticity. The flavor of the holiday was standardized, and that sameness was a comfort. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't Instagram. It was exactly enough. Before the first guest arrived, the table began its quiet transformation. A child, careful not to drop anything, placed glass tumblers at each spot, some filled with sparkling apple cider, fizzing softly for the younger cousins, and others waiting for the grown-ups' drinks. For adults, Boone's Farm apple wine or a bottle of Mattias Rose often stood in for anything fancier, their labels bright and unashamed on the sideboard. Dad's beer, usually something domestic, cold from the avocado fridge, sat in a can beside his plate, condensation pooling on the vinyl tablecloth. Setting the table was its own ritual. Paper napkins, folded into fans or accordion shapes, were tucked into juice glasses or laid beside plates, a small flourish learned from a magazine or passed down from someone's aunt. At the center, a cardboard pilgrim or turkey bought for 99 cents at the supermarket unfolded into 3 dimensions, a little wobbly, but always the centerpiece. Sometimes there were plastic tumblers with leaf patterns, sometimes a mismatched set of glasses from the kitchen cabinet, but always enough for everyone, even if it meant pulling out the folding table from the garage and squeezing in extra chairs. The room filled with the scent of cider and the faint tang of wine, the kind that was just sweet enough to please everyone and just cheap enough to buy by the jug. The table, crowded but ready, promised a place for every voice and every story. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't Instagram. It was exactly enough. By mid-morning, the living room pulsed with the glow of the color television. NBC's broadcast of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade began at 9 sharp, its bright floats and marching bands creating a steady backdrop to the kitchen's quiet industry. For 3 hours, the parade's soundtrack mingled with the smells of roasting turkey and sweet potatoes, a gentle reminder that the day was unfolding on a national schedule. In houses across America, the parade was more than entertainment. It was the signal that the holiday had truly begun. As the parade wound down, the first doorbell rang. Grandparents arrived in thick wool coats, balancing pies in foil and paper grocery sacks. The air shifted, greetings, laughter, and the familiar creak of folding chairs being set up around the table. Coats were draped over the backs of couches, and someone always asked if the parade was still on, though everyone knew it ended at noon. The kitchen filled with their voices, the clink of pie tins, and the faint pop of a wine bottle being opened for the grown-ups. Boone's Farm or Mattias Rose, poured into mismatched glasses, shared space with tumblers of sparkling cider for the kids. The television became a new kind of clock. By 3 o'clock, CBS switched over to the Dallas Cowboys game, and the living room rearranged itself again. Uncles claimed the best seats, arguing about the starting quarterback before the first snap. Every year, the same uncle insisted the Cowboys would win, and every year someone disagreed, loudly but with a smile. The noise built, chairs filled, and anticipation grew. The house felt full in a way that was both predictable and irreplaceable. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't Instagram, it was exactly enough. Dessert arrived in the form of familiar brands and well-worn routines. Libby's pumpkin pie, spiced and sturdy, sat beside a glossy pecan pie made with Caro syrup, both recipes straight from the label, both as much a part of the holiday as the turkey itself. A tub of Cool Whip, pulled from the fridge, offered a soft, sweet cloud for every slice. Advertisements promised it would hold its shape, and it did, even as the kitchen grew warm and the pies cooled on the counter. As the evening slipped past dinner, leftovers became their own quiet ritual. Slices of turkey, cranberry sauce, and sweet potatoes disappeared into Tupperware containers, the lids pressed down with a practiced hand until the famous burp confirmed a tight seal. The fridge filled with stacks of colored plastic, each one a promise of sandwiches and soup in the days to come. Somewhere in the living room, a child nodded off on the couch, the television humming softly in the background. By 9 o'clock, the house had settled. The cook, moving with slow satisfaction, wiped down the last counter and turned off the kitchen light. The noise and bustle faded, replaced by the gentle hush of a home at rest. Thanksgiving, in all its branded, imperfect glory, was complete for another year. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't Instagram, it was exactly enough. Today, Thanksgiving scrolls past in curated feeds and fleeting stories, but the scent of coffee and stuffing still lingers in memory. Ritual, not spectacle, made the day sacred. In a world chasing novelty, sometimes enough is found in the familiar. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't Instagram, it was exactly enough.